everyone, and welcome to Studio B's Meet Your Center interview series. I'm Jennifer Ciarimboli. I'm the founder and CEO of Studio B, and I'm thrilled to be here with all of you today. And I'm even more excited to welcome Lynette Suchar, who is here from Canada. You're in Canada right now,
yes.
But lives between Canada and Mexico. And Lynette serves as a senior facilitator here at Studio B. She's one of the founding teachers for the Studio B platform. And we're delighted to just have her here and talk today about our theme of August, which is rest. Welcome, Lynette.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. We're so delighted. And thank you all for attending our interview today. I wanted to take a moment just to introduce you all more to Lynette, and I'll just take a moment to read your bio, Lynette. Lynette Suchar is a certified E-RYT yoga teacher with over 500 hours of training, many more hours than 500, I should say. She's been teaching classes, workshops, retreats, festivals, and trainings for almost 15 years in Mexico and Canada. Lynette specializes in restoration practices, which can help to calm and retrain our nervous system. She offers programs that move us out of our conditioned programs and into higher octaves of self, using practices like yoga nidra, meditation, breath work, traditional Chinese medicine, and astrology. She did her foundational training with Nicki, Doane and Modestini. Lynette is a certified restorative yoga teacher with Judith Hanson Lasater, Yin with Bernie Clark, and trauma-informed children's and prenatal yoga nidra with Brenda Feuerstein. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Most recently, she's been studying traditional Chinese medicine with Tiffany Cruikshank, and Lynette views yoga nidra as a thread of transformation, an opportunity to dive deep within and learn to live in the wide awake. That's beautiful. Welcome, Lynette. Thank you for being here.
I am excited for our conversation.
I am too. I always have this feeling that the first time I talk, because we did prep work yesterday and we spent a lot of time together yesterday, and I have this like fear that that it's not going to go as smoothly as it did, because there was so much freshness and seeing you, and we haven't talked for a couple weeks at least, and anyway, so I feel like I shouldn't be worried because
no, I trust the flow.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm ready to dig in because we had such a juicy conversation yesterday. And I was thinking all morning that resting, this act of restoring the body, is a radical act.
It really is. It's, we've been hearing this a lot on social media, in the community, that it's a revolutionary act or a radical act. And I believe it is, because really, we have not been conditioned to view rest as an important quality or addition in our lives. We are taught to push hard, go hard, work hard. And I think rest has been viewed as lazy or unproductive. But the truth is, and the more research I do, rest is the thing that is going to make us stronger and is going to strengthen us and is going to strengthen especially our nervous system and immune system, which we need more than ever right now. Right. And it's a radical act, because I believe right now we're shifting the paradigm, we're shifting the perspective in our culture and in our society on the importance of rest, however that looks like to you. We're talking about yoga nidra, but rest is rest. And it's, I think, one of the most important things we can be doing right now.
I agree with you. I was on vacation last week. Some of you know that, many of you don't. And I was telling you that it took me a couple days just to settle in. And what was so noticeable for me is how, and we mentioned this yesterday again, the language that was coming up for me. And there was a lot of self-critique, and there was just like a restlessness of not really being able to immediately settle in to a cycle that was natural, a rhythm that felt supportive, because we are so entangled into a culture that pushes us beyond what's healthy.
I agree. And I had the same experience. It was my birthday last week, and I was on holiday with a friend, and we kept saying out loud, oh, we're lazy. Oh, I'm lazy. And I'm like, no, let's change that wording right now. I'm relaxed. We're relaxed.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really important because to me, this pressure about not resting is a condition. I say conditioning and programming a lot. And all I mean by that is we are conditioned beings. You know, I'm not going to dive too deep into that, but we have programs within us, and hurrying and busyness and hustling is a program. It's a habit, if you want to look at it that way. And so I think it's really important, as we're learning to slow down and rest and realize the importance of rest, that we also have to be gentle with ourselves. And that's part of a rest mentality. And so I often say, and I got this from my mentor, Krista Ryerson, but I love sharing this because I think it's so valuable. But I'll often say, when I'm beating myself up about something like, oh, why am I not doing something? Oh, I should be productive. Oh, why did I sleep till 8? I love the one who is being hard on myself. I love the one who's rushing. I love the one who's busy. And it cultivates that quality of self-love and trust and kindness. And I think that's a part of the rest mentality too.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. I'm curious to just understand how your focus on yoga nidra specifically, and how your passion for rest and restorative practices, how did it develop? Were you always, on this path, or was it, how did that shift for you?
Well, I don't consider myself, I don't like boxes. I don't believe in them, but I don't consider myself a type A personality, but I also have an anxious personality, and I have a lot of energy. And so that is, I'll get back to that. But one of the ways I found these restoration practices is injury. I had shoulder injuries, and that's when I discovered restorative yoga and started studying with Judith Hanson Lasater, because I couldn't do what I've always done in yoga. And so all of a sudden, yoga, it was like an awakening where yoga meant more than one thing. Yoga wasn't just about vinyasa or ashtanga or flowing or chaturanga dandasana. All of a sudden, it could be something else. And I didn't expect to fall in love with it, but I fell in love with restorative yoga. And it reminded me, and yoga nidra reminded me, of the reason I started teaching. And that's because I remember the very first class I ever taught, it was at a community center, just a basic general beginner class for busy people after work. And I saw their faces coming into the room. And of course, it was like that hurried, stressed, busy kids. I'm squeezing this into my day. And then I saw their faces after Shavasana, after the class, and their faces literally looked different. Their face had changed. And without knowing what I know now, that was 15 years ago. I taught before I was certified, because back then you didn't need certification. Okay. And I remember, I knew something that I didn't know yet, and that was the power of slowing down and rest. And so teaching these practices, I started to remember that first experience. And then with yoga nidra, I taught for a number of years at a Canadian yoga festival that is no longer, but I taught at it for about 5 years. And 2 girlfriends and I went to a yoga nidra class after we were done. And it was my first ever. I actually had no idea what it really was. And at the end, we found ourselves in the bathroom crying because it was so powerful, because we were feeling all of these feelings and we had such powerful visualizations, which happens in Yoga Nidra. All three of us had really powerful visualizations, and it gives me goosebumps to this day because all of us have taken a trajectory, and that was probably 6-7 years ago now, where we have kind of followed those visualizations that happened during that first practice. And so I've just, to tie it all together, I've just over the years have seen the magic of restorative practices. And like I was saying to you yesterday, it used to be considered for if you were a little older and maybe didn't move as fast, or if you were injured, that's when you did restorative yoga. That's when you did yin or yoga nidra. But thankfully, that is starting to shift, just like our perception of rest is starting to shift, right? We're realizing that, no, these are actually powerful practices. And the more I teach, and it's deep within me now, but the slower, more restorative practices, and the slower you get. So to me, even yoga nidra is slower than restorative. The more powerful the practice, and actually the more tired I am after. I'm not as tired teaching a vinyasa class as I am teaching yoga nidra, because energetically it's such a powerful practice, and it's happening on the inside where we can't see what's happening, but we can feel it.
Yeah, I absolutely feel it. When I feel when I do your class, and there's been other, there's other teachers, of course, on the Studio B platform, and other teachers I've practiced yoga nidra with outside of Studio B, and every single experience that I've had, and there have been experiences where I've actually fallen completely asleep and still felt a dramatic energetic shift happen as a result of the experience of the class. And so I absolutely agree with you. Energetically, it's an extremely potent and powerful practice. And so for the viewers that are watching right now that may not know what the word it means, yoga nidra, could you define nidra? Can you help explain what yoga nidra actually is? And
yes, yeah, oh, sorry.
That's okay.
I always say, like any, yoga language is based on a Sanskrit language. It was just another language. So it's like French or Spanish. So I kind of break it down like that too. And then just to say that it can sound like a weird word or a scary word, but yoga nidra is just a translation really of a yogi sleep or yogic sleep. And I like to think of it more like an awakened sleep. That's often how I describe it now, because there are different kinds of rest. Sleep is one of them. We need sleep. We need a certain amount of sleep at night to heal our body and have all of our systems recover, et cetera, et cetera. And then there's things like napping or yoga nidra, where it's something where you're resting. And in yoga nidra, your physical body will probably become totally relaxed. And sometimes people have said it almost feels like you can't move because you're so relaxed, but you're not necessarily always sleeping. Your brain might be alert and awake. And it's kind of cool to have that juxtaposition where you're alert, you are participating in the rest. So it's almost like active rest, because you're choosing to participate in the relaxation, whereas sleep, you just fall asleep and you drop down and you're not doing anything. But with yoga nidra, you're actively participating to rest your brain. You might fall asleep, and that's okay. I think if you fall asleep, you're tired and you need to fall asleep and you need the rest. And I think you're still going to gain the benefits, maybe not in the same way, but you're still going to gain the benefits.
Yeah.
Your hearing is actually the first sense to fall asleep. So often people think they've fallen asleep, but their hearing has just diminished and they're still in the practice. And this restful practice is doing something different than sleep. And they're both important. So
Absolutely. So what is the difference? So it's doing something different than sleep. So go ahead.
Sorry. I'm just so excited. I want to say it all right now.
I know, it's just the weird delay that we're conditioned right now I'm excited too.
Well, in Yoga Nidra, I can tell you what's happening, and basically we're relaxing deeply. We're relaxing very deeply. And we do that by moving through something called the koshas of the body, or it simply translates to the layers of the body. So we relax the physical body, and then we relax the breath or energy or energetic body. And then we relax the mental and emotional body. And then we relax it's said to be the wisdom body. I think also it's the transformation body. It's where this visualization or this magic of possibility can happen. When we relax all of those layers, we get to this space called the bliss body. And these are the layers that are talked about in Yoga Nidra. And the bliss body, my teacher, Brenda Feuerstein, always said it's our true nature. I believe that's the word she used, our true nature. Or she also said it's like the blue sky. Like deep down inside, there's this true nature. It's like how whatever resonates for you. You know, if you believe in the word God, it might be that. You might think true nature, you might think a light, your true self, but that is in you and it's unchanging. The reason it's hard to access is because we have these layers of tension. And so with the practice of Yoga Nidra, we're releasing these tensions from the body. And I like to say, it's like if you clench your fist all day, and then at the end of the day, you unclench your fist, it's probably going to feel like it's going to hurt a little, or it's going to feel a little uncomfortable. And so that's potentially the transformational practice within Yoga Nidra, and that you're releasing these tensions from the body. And that's happening at the same time that our brain waves are slowing down. So as we relax through these layers, the brain waves are slowing down from, you know, the alert beta frequency through to delta frequency, which is the slower, more dreamlike frequency. And what happens when we get there, we are moving past the filters of analyzing, past the filters of criticizing or judging, you know, as we humans do. And so once we pass that layer, we're in this space of possibility where we can imagine. Imagination is huge in Yoga Nidra, where we can see maybe a different outcome or something that we can't think is possible when we're in our analytical thinking everyday brain. So that's kind of what's happening. And that's also where transformation is potentially happening. And then also I'll just add, in Yoga Nidra, we talk about polarity. It's one of the layers we move through. And this is also one of the transformational pieces, because we're asked often to hold two different sensations or thoughts or emotions at the same time. And this is used in a lot of, I know it's been used in scientific studies and in a lot of therapies, especially with the military, that, you know, when you can learn to sit in the space between comfortable and uncomfortable, or at least acknowledge that both exist and sit in the middle of that, that's a really powerful place to be. And when we can learn to do that, we take it off the mat and we learn that, oh, you have a different opinion than me, and it's okay. It's okay. It's not black or white. It just, they both exist and it's okay. So to me, that's a really powerful part of Yoga Nidra.
Well, absolutely, especially right now. Right.
Especially right now, which is why I love that we're talking about this right now.
Yeah. And we need, what I love, there are a couple of things that you said that really resonated. And I think what I find, the first thing that diminishes for me when I'm caught up in, because I am definitely a type A, you know, person. And I like to say I'm recovering type A, because I do catch myself. I'm able to better navigate some natural tendencies that can be really unhealthy. And so for me, when I really, and yet, even with, you know, 22 years of practice under my belt and 13 years as a teacher, I still have a tendency to not catch. And when I do just burn the candle at both ends, I lose my capacity to drop into creativity and connection. Completely. Like I will sit at my computer and work my way through something that's happening back here that I don't want to deal with. Right. So that's my just pattern that comes in. And what rest does, whether it's a restorative practice, whether it's a hike in the forest, whether it's a mindfulness practice, meditation, yoga nidra, whatever the practice is that I lean into, it just opens me back up. Right. It's like coming back to that bliss body that
That true self, that place that's this blue sky that's always there, and clouds will pass through and airplanes will pass through and storms will pass through, but that sky doesn't change. It's always there.
Yeah.
And so for any form of rest, oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. We're the delay thing.
I was just going to say, any form of rest will allow us to find that space. Like you said, whether it's a walk in nature or whatever rest means to you, you can tap into that.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And yet there's such a, even though it is rest, and you named this when you were talking and describing yoga nidra specifically, there is a vibrancy there, an alertness, a vividness that sometimes I lack access to directly. So I find that having, and at Studio B, we talk a lot about the development of inner resourcing, right? Of being able to self-regulate and catching ourselves when we're caught up in a cycle or pattern that is not of benefit to, our true nature, our true selves, our bliss body. And yet absolutely there's so many ways in, and it's so beautiful that you found this way in.
Well, you said something important. You said, I believe you said, when you notice or when you're aware. And to me, that's the biggest practice that we can do. Is it's like the first step. When we're aware of something that's happening, we're aware of, oh, I'm beating myself up because I'm not busy, or I'm not doing something, or I'm aware of how I feel. That's the key, because it's just, to me, the awareness is the space between. It's the pause where we can take a breath and go, okay, this is a choice point. I get to choose what I do now. Do I continue doing this, or do I make another choice? And part of my story is, when I was younger, I struggled from depression. And when I did yoga nidra, and I had to do, as part of my yoga nidra training, is a mental health first aid course. And that was so enlightening. And those two things, and part of my practicum with my trauma-informed yoga nidra, is I had to do 10 one-on-one sessions with people. And I was blown away. I realized I also have an anxiety tendency. And then I realized how many people struggle with anxiety. And I mean, it's not getting any better right now. We're being faced with a lot right now. And then in the mental health first aid, I learned that anxiety and depression is one of the biggest issues in Canada right now for mental health. Like, it's not other things that you would think, it's anxiety and depression. And I have to say, yoga nidra for me has been life-changing. I do it almost every day. And I don't know, it's kind of a mysterious practice too. I can tell you the science and I know what's happening, but I also don't know what's happening. I just know that for me, it's slowly helped me to choose again. It slowly helps me to make a different choice. It allows me to pause and notice my tendency and go, okay, I can say something different to myself, or I can love the one who's anxious right now, or I can just make a different choice. I can take a timeout. I can set a boundary with other people and say, I need a timeout. I need some space. And it doesn't happen instantly. It's a practice. This is a lifelong practice that I think we will learn to do over time if we have the courage to pause and be still and be alone with ourselves. Because to me, that's often the hardest part of these practices, slowing down and like being stuck with yourself and stuck with your thoughts. And that's normal. And it's just over time you get used to that place, and you start to talk to yourself different, and these practices start to help you to be alone with yourself and be okay with noticing the thoughts, noticing where you're at. It's okay. It's all okay. But it's not the same every day, and it's a lifelong practice.
Yeah, just like anything else, right?
But without it, we don't get that chance to pause in the space between. And that's why I love these restoration practices.
And restoration practices are also part of your of who you are as a teacher, a part of your practice, embodied restorative practices. And I noticed, Nicki, Doane, you started with Ashtanga, is what I
my very first yoga class was actually Iyengar yoga,
okay.
Which was intense at the time. I
Right.
didn't know anything about yoga.
It is intense.
20 years ago or 20 plus. But I'm so glad that was my foundation, because it taught me about the importance of alignment. And that really has been the foundation through all the practices that I do. And then I discovered Ashtanga. So those were my two first experiences with yoga. And Nicki, Doane and Eddie Modestini, my training with them, they studied with BKS Iyengar and Patabi Joyce, and then they created this fusion of the two. So I've always been taught about the importance of different aspects, including restorative yoga. That was part of my training before I studied with Judith. So I've always learned to pull in these different aspects and how they all can be effective, instead of just being this or this or this.
Right.
Yeah.
And we talked to, I mentioned to you earlier that I feel like I had to really slow down recently. August is so full of heat and fire and masculine energy, and there's so much going on in the world. And for me, knowing that I could just shift gears, and then, we talked about emotions and shame and guilt and this inner critic that comes up when we're not, doing our movement practices or taking time for ourselves. It could be a radical act of kindness to just lay down on the floor. Or Olivia Clark, one of the other senior facilitators, just wrote a beautiful blog about these exact topics. And she said, every day it's a non-negotiable practice for me, Shavasana.
Yeah.
And I love that. And it is such a dramatic need in the world to teach people that physical health isn't just about fitness and pushing ourselves and pushing the limits of the body muscularly, right? Physical health is sometimes just saying, no, I need to stop moving and lay my body onto the ground, onto the earth, onto the floor, right?
Yeah, I think it's been actually the missing link in everything we do in medicine and all sorts of things, that the importance of what's going on up here. I mean, you can go to the gym every day and eat your green juice, drink your green juice every day, but if you're struggling up here, that's part of it. And to me, that's where rest comes into play, and the importance of it, because it helps us to work this out and be okay up here, and
turn towards. I think that quiet space just offers me a moment to turn towards the discomfort of whatever's coming up in any particular moment, whether that discomfort is in the body, whether that discomfort is in the heart, the mind, if it's in a relationship, if it's a struggle professionally.
But most of us, I shouldn't say most of us, many of us throughout our lives, we don't do that. We work harder, we keep busy, we move hard, so we don't think about it. And so again, that goes back to that what I said earlier about polarity and the power of polarity. And that's beautiful that you said that, because I say this in my classes all the time. Can you feel comfortable and uncomfortable at the same time, and just be okay that you can feel comfortable and uncomfortable at the same time. And what does that feel like?
Right.
You know, and it's and it's not just these practices that have helped me. You know, I have done a lot of other work, but when we can just know that it's okay to feel, that's really important. And when we slow down like this, we often feel a lot because we're with ourselves. And so to know, like, our emotions are the sensations in our bodies. They're not something to fight against or wish they weren't there. To me, our emotions, the sensations are all messengers. They're all messengers. They're asking us to go, oh, interesting, I'm feeling sad. I love the one who's feeling sad. And then maybe tracking that back a little bit. What's going on? It's a messenger. And if we can follow that message, maybe we can find some ease eventually.
Yeah, it's
Instead of going, oh, I'm sad, I got to not be sad.
Right. Yeah. It reminds me of the rain practice, like just recognizing, right? Oh, sadness is present, right?
Interesting. Oh, I feel sad. Interesting. Oh, curious. Curiosity is, to me, a big part of these practices too. And just being curious, not only in your setup of your pose, but in what you're experiencing. And I always say there's no, especially in yoga nidra, you can feel a lot of different ways. It can be deeply relaxing and it can bring up other things. And how you feel in the practice is exactly how you're supposed to be feeling. And it's, again, it's that clenched fist. As we unclench the fist, it's not always comfortable. It's just about being curious and observing. And I always say, I am not a trained therapist. Have a team of people around you. And as a teacher, I have a team that I can refer people to when bigger things come up, because this is a tool. And to me, it's very therapeutic. And I think it's good to have a team so that we can start clearing this stuff away as it arises, because that's what we want to do, because that's where we'll be able to rest in that space more and more. And don't get me wrong, I've been doing this and teaching this for a while now, and I still have my moments. You know, it's not like it's like oh, it's gone. No, it just, what I've learned though is as things arise, they arise at a different octave. So what I mean by that is maybe I'm not as reactionary as I used to be, or maybe I don't, you know, just blow a gasket right off the bat. I'm able now to go, okay, I'm feeling a lot. I'm feeling very angry. I need to take a moment and calm down, and then I can respond. So it's not that it's never going to happen. It's just you learn. I always say, I keep going back to rest in the space between, because to me, that's what it teaches. It's this rest between an experience and then what we choose to do next. And to me, that is the power of rest. The rest is the space between. The rest is where we learn to slow down. The rest is the pause. And that pause is where we have an opportunity to make a choice. And that's why it's so important to me.
Yeah, it reminds me of that Viktor Frankl quote. And I'm going to completely not remember it. I know Pop will post it in chat for me, but that response, you know, in that space where between, you know, the trigger coming in, if we could create enough space to pause and respond with a response that's really aligned with our truest self, that is the source of freedom. Right.
It's true. And it's also this journey of getting to know your true self, because many of us, we don't know. We think we are our conditions. We think we are our habits. But through this practice, when we can release some of that, we learn our own authentic self. And it's a beautiful journey, you know.
And I think it just helps me remember that it's a human experience between stimulus and response. So I'll read it since Paula posted it for me. But between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. Viktor Frankl. And that quote, you know, I have it on my desk at work because I think about it quite frequently, even though I can't remember it when I need to. It's just, been my experience. I think the restorative practices for me in particular, yin yoga has been a very significant part of my life as a practitioner, as a teacher. And it gave me, I was able to develop bandwidth that wasn't there previously. I didn't have a capacity to be with discomfort in a healthy way. And so I'm fascinated to hear you articulate these same benefits from the yoga nidra practices, because this has been my experience through yin yoga, through insight practices, vipassana specifically, just developing this capacity to turn towards what it is that's making me feel knotted up, towards the discomfort, and get curious about what's happening. And then the compassion practices coming in, remembering that I'm just a human being having an experience of being human. And that experience of being human includes all of the joy and all of the sorrow. And I could be with both. And that's freedom, right? It is. It's so beautiful.
I couldn't have said it better myself. That's this compassion is what rest teaches us. It's what restorative practices, like I teach yin as well. And to me, it's all an access point in really to the same place. And we all enter yoga from a different place, at a different level, from a different practice. It's like, to me, we're moving towards the same thing. And these practices just focus more on the rest aspect. And learning to be kind to yourself.
Yeah.
It really is just.
Which is maybe the whole practice. Sometimes I think that, like, I think sometimes maybe what I need to do every day just to be more human is do a metta practice or a compassion practice. Maybe that's just it. Because
and maybe that's the practice today.
So hard. I mean, the inner critic is so alive in me. Yeah. It's just really loud sometimes. But
again, it's the awareness. You're like, oh, okay, interesting. I'm being really critical. Okay, well, I'm going to do it anyway. And I love the one who's being critical. It's okay. You can be critical. I see you. I hear you. Right. I'm going to do this compassionate practice for myself today.
Yeah.
It's just, but again, it goes back to that awareness. Like you notice, oh, I'm being critical. And in that space, you can make your choice instead of just like bullying through things, right, and not being aware that you're even doing it. And
we just keep going with it, right?
and all of us have it now, before,
yeah,
weaved throughout, for always. I don't know. It's just, I think that's part of the human experience. It's conditioning, it's a habit, and it's part of this. We're human beings designed a certain way. And to me, that's part of waking up. When I say waking up, that's what I mean. We can, again, this wording comes from my mentor, Krista Ryerson, but we can live in the wide awake or we can stay asleep. And no judgment. I think we're all waking up at different times in different ways. And again, the more we learn to do this, here's the biggest thing. Why do we want to do this? Because the more we learn to be compassionate with ourselves, guess what? It's going to be easier for me to be compassionate with you or with someone else or with my students. It's just going to change your relationships, but it has to start with you, because if you don't treat yourself kindly, right?
It's a practice. Well, we talk a lot about self-care really equates to collective care, and Studio B as a drishti. You know, I think of Rachel every time this comes up, Rachel Meyer, who's part of our team. And she's constantly reminding us, like, these practices are so necessary for the world right now. We do these practices so we could take better care of each other, so we could show up and we could be brave.
So we can strengthen our nervous system and strengthen our system so we can be here and do what we need to do.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Well, it's 40 minutes have gone by really quickly. And there's a ton of questions. So if it's okay with you, I'd like to just remind our audience to either chat in the questions, or you could turn your camera on and raise your hand and you could talk to Lynette directly. But we'll go ahead and go through some of these questions, Lynette, if that's okay.
Okay.
Okay, so let's see. So Paula said, do you do yoga nidra yourself by listening to a recording, or are you able to guide yourself in the practice?
Well, that's what makes it a really unique practice, is that with any other style of yoga, you really can do it yourself. With yoga nidra, you are guided. And that's that choice where I'm going to choose to be taken on this journey. And I'm going to allow someone to guide me through this journey. So simple answer, you are guided through this journey. I can guide myself through like a body scan, which is part of a yoga nidra practice, or I can pay attention to my breath and do that practice. But for the full effect, because when we're doing it ourselves, I'm analyzing. If I allow myself to be guided, I can just surrender and be guided, and I don't have to know what's coming next.
Do you ever, I'm wondering, do you ever listen to your own recordings?
I do, to make sure they sound good before I put them out. It took me a while. I never used to like the sound of my voice, but it's so like a long time ago, but it's funny. I used to be really, really shy and insecure and, I got class mouse award in elementary school, which is silly to me, but that's another story. But I find it so cool that now I consider my voice my superpower in a way, because I've learned to use it for good, if that makes sense. And so I don't mind my voice. I often don't listen to them just because I'm like, oh, I should have done this. Oh, I should have said this. Oh, I should have left more space between,
Right.
But I still listen to them. I find it harder to relax to them. I can do some of them, but some of them, as you learn. And so I'm analyzing a little bit instead of just relaxing. So.
Yeah, I completely understand.
Yeah.
But I was curious anyway. Let's see. Rachel has a great question. She said, I'd love to hear more about how living in Canada and Mexico feeds you and your practices. How does it affect your spirit?
I went to Mexico, I forget how many years ago, and I was always someone who didn't feel like she belonged or didn't know where she should be. I knew I was very loved. I just always felt like, where do I belong? What should I be doing? And I remember going to Mexico with my mom and dad, and I remember a voice came to me, and I don't think it was my voice, but I remember stepping onto the earth there, and I had these words. It said, I'm home. And I fell in love with the culture and the language. I can't speak English, but I can speak Spanish pretty fluently. I just fell in love with the place. And then I didn't go for many years. I built a life. I got my degree in journalism and communications. I actually work as a writer. I'm not doing too much right now, but I'm a writer. I worked in communications for a nonprofit. I worked as a journalist for a while. Got my yoga teacher trainings, and then about 4 years ago or 5 years ago now, I guess I went back, and nothing had changed. There's something about the place that I just love. And so over the years, I've learned I have two homes, and that's okay. Again, there was black or white. Well, where should I be? Where should I live? Guess what? I can do both. And I can create a life where both exist. And Yoga Nidra helped me with that, because one of my first samkalpas, which is the intention you set in Yoga Nidra, was to cultivate this kind of life. And I won't tell you exactly what it was, but here I am. And that's, again, it's this magical practice. And so I've just learned that I love both. Being in Canada is like my roots. It's where I go to just, and I can just fill my well a little. But then when I go to Mexico, I just feel like I can fly, and I feel like my spirit soars, and I feel home in a way I can't explain. So I love that I've been able to cultivate yoga communities in both. It's really special to me. I have communities and I teach in both places, and I just think that's so cool.
It's very, very cool and beautiful. Yeah, I'm so happy for you.
Thank you. It's a gift.
It is. Yeah. Okay, there's one more. Let's see. Well, there's just a couple of comments here, but before, and everybody's just beautiful comments, beautiful talk, lovely talk. Hildy said that she's nearly fallen asleep while guiding her students in Yoga Nidra. Paula said that she loves the notion of surrendering. That's, I think, so important as a practice as well. Jyoti says, I love this practice of I love the one who. And I agree with her. I do a lot of internal family systems work. So I identify with parts of myself. And I think I'm going to add that layer on. I love, the one who is this part, or comes up with it.
I really have to credit Krista Ryerson for that, because I've been mentoring with her all year, and I've used it in my most current. I just completed it's called Nourish and Emerge. It was a Yoga Nidra training and mentorship for people. And the feedback I received is that was very powerful for them as well. So I believe we're here to share what we learn, and I love sharing it because I know how powerful it is. So
yeah, it really is beautiful. And then Sarah said, and I'm gonna grab something really quick. So Sarah said, the painting behind you is so pretty. And I also wanted to show you another pretty painting. And Lynette is also an artist, a very talented artist. And this is one of her pieces. And that terrible glare is bothering me. But Lynette, could you tell us a little bit about your art and how we could find out more about that as well?
Well, it's these days I'm doing it just for me, just for fun. I don't really have anything for sale right now, but it's definitely on it's one thing I would like to do more in this life. I've had art shows at different points in my life, and have sold paintings at different points in my life. I might have a print of that one left still for sale if anyone wants it, but I'm someone who it's never just been a straightforward path for me. I have always loved to do many different things, and I'm definitely more right brain than left brain. And so anything creative, I love cooking, I love painting, I love it. For me, it's therapeutic, it's meditation to do anything like that. And it's why I love Yoga Nidra, because Yoga Nidra actually can strengthen the creativity within you. And
absolutely.
Yeah, I'm a creative person, because to me, creativity equals curiosity. And I'm a very curious person, and I want to know everything, and I want to know how to do everything. And I am curious about people. And like I said to you yesterday, I'm usually the one interviewing. I like asking the questions. So this has been a good practice for me to answer, but I'm just a curious person, and that's where creativity comes into play, I think, because
absolutely
everything in life is unknown. Life is unknown. So the only thing we can do, I think, is be curious about it. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, perfect. That's so perfect. It's a perfect way to wrap up this beautiful discussion today. And on a Friday afternoon in August, it's 98% humidity here in Pennsylvania today.
That's like Mexico. That's why I'm in Canada right now.
Yes, it's very, very hot and sunny, and that's also a blessing, but I'm definitely more of a winter girl. So anyway, but I can't imagine anybody else I would rather share the hour with. It was really
It
delightful
was really nice.
being here with you today and learning more about you and your practices and your heart.
It was actually an ex-boyfriend. I always think I like to take things from every experience, it's, you can call it optimism, but I just look at it like almost a coping mechanism where I just like to take what I can from every experience. And these words were from him a long time ago, but they've always stuck with me. And so I'll leave you with this: inspire and continue, or keep being inspired and keep inspiring. And I feel like that's kind of how I live my life, or I try to anyway. So
absolutely, Lynette. That's very, very appropriate. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you. Paula has dropped all of the information on how we could find you at Lynette_Suchar, and it's spelled Suchar. Yoga with Lynette, LynetteSuchar.com. We will post Lynette's links and a recording of this video after it goes through post-editing on our blog. Where else can we find you on social media, Lynette?
I'm really mostly on Instagram.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I have a Facebook page as well, Yoga with Lynette. But I post mostly on Instagram. It's where I think my personality and my offerings and my stories and my writings come out the most. So that's a good place to start.
Fantastic. And you have a training coming up. Will you just also quickly tell people where they could go and what that training is for?
Sure. So like I said, I offered Nourish and Emerge, and it's a yoga nidra training and mentorship. And it's not just a basic training. Like I was saying to you yesterday, I think with yoga nidra, it's really powerful to experience it yourself. So not only are you learning about yoga nidra and the science behind it and the anatomy of it, but you're going through it. And it's not just a training. There's like this additional element where I'm also there for you in another capacity. And so I just finished that, and I wasn't going to offer one until next year, but you know what? Something in me just said, no, do it again, because right now we need this. And I think we need these tools. So I'm offering it again. Right now, I have a start date of September 18th. So we'll see what happens.
Awesome. Well, we will share that link to all of our channels. And thank you so much for your time today. It was really great.
Oh, thank you. You guys are also sweet. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us today at Studio B. Have a great weekend.